purpose today is to talk about the CAO survey. This is the 5th CAO survey that we've done. And you know, each one has been fascinating in its own way. And my goal today is not certainly to read the report at you, because it's 96 pages long and I would exhaust my time and your patience simultaneously. The second thing is I'm not even going to kind of just give you the top line insights that are in the report. I think a lot of people expect when a StrategyCorp person shows up, we're going to talk a bit about politics. And so what I wanted to talk a little bit about was some of the political implications of this report and what they mean for the sector, because you know, there's the data and then there's the analysis and then there's the underlying news you can use meaning. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. So some of the things I'm going to be saying really aren't in the report. I'm going to be off-roading a little bit. But I think it's important to talk about it because some of these trends I think are really significant. And if we can just jump to the next slide. First, our methodology. Every year we interview about 25 to 30 CAOs. This year it turned out to be 27. And this year we had a mixture coming from upper tier, lower tier, single tier. And it's really important. This isn't a survey in the sense of, you know, fill in a survey and getting number type responses. This is qualitative research. We say we'll talk to them for an hour. We often wind up talking to them for 2 hours. And we get some really, really fascinating conversations going, and that's what we report on. And in the structure of the report, you'll see probably more than half the content is direct quotations. And so if you take a look at the report, which I really urge you to do, you're hearing a lot of the voices of the municipal sector themselves. But then there's analysis too. This year's key insights are an interesting build on what we've heard in previous years. But really, going back to our first report, what we concluded was that there are two main problems with being a CAO, if you will. The first is that there's a job that only you can do, which is you've got to create a senior management team that's capable of managing everything. And then you have to provide that function where you're the linchpin between the elected council and then the rest of your public service. And so usually, every other year we've talked, the biggest problem that would be on their minds would be money. And it would either be capital dollars, or it would be operating dollars, or it would be both. But the problem would be the dollars that we do not have versus the needs that we do have. Now there'd be other problems too, but those would be the biggies. This year, for the first time, the biggest single challenge in the CAO role was actually on the HR side. And in cases, it would often be kind of a double-barreled. It's about the people that we have. They are exhausted and all about to leave and increasingly got gray hair. But then it would also be, we can't recruit the people that we need. And so from a point of view of the challenge of the role, that was like the dominant finding, and it's never been that before. So we thought that that was kind of notable. Secondly, the other big challenge of the CAO's role is managing whatever is the inherent challenge of the community. And so a good example of this, just kind of representative, imagine you were the CAO in Oshawa and you suddenly found out that General Motors was shutting. So whatever the big deal of the day is, you become kind of like the lead person who has to save the municipality on that kind of thing. And there's I think a real risk in municipal government to not, play municipal government the way a 5-year-old soccer team plays soccer, like a little swarm of bees chasing after the number one issue. And so one of the biggest single problems when you're the CAO, when you've got a huge issue like that, is letting your ECDev person be the ECDev person and not trying to be the ECDev person while you're trying to be the CAO and wanting to be everything else. And of the inherent challenges in the community, this time it's the combination, the 1-2-3 punch of growth, infrastructure, and climate change. So we'd also hear about the pandemic's human cost, mental health, poverty, housing, that kind of thing. But the 1-2-3 of growth, infrastructure, and climate change were kind of top of the list. So when we ask the question, what keeps CAOs up at night? And this is so this is the question that really kind of gets at, okay, let's not talk about the important, let's talk about the urgent. What is top of mind for you? HR was the biggie, and that's what it's never been before. And what's notable about this is there's a couple of things that really dropped like a stone. One is you see managing council. How many councillors or mayors do I have in the room? Just put up your hands. Yeah, I hate to tell you this, you sometimes show up on a list as being an issue that has to be managed. The only good thing I can tell you is the province also does too a lot of the time. And in both cases, managing council fell substantially. Like it would often be one of the top 3 issues, or like get about a third of the mentions. And in this case, that fell dramatically. And I'm going to talk a little bit in a minute about why. The province was also another huge issue. And in the 2019 report, it was ugly. I don't know if you recall the eve of AMO in 2019, but I don't think we would count it amongst our happiest of occasions as a sector. Everybody was wondering if they were about to be amalgamated. And Michael Fenn, my colleague, and Ken Sealing were flying around the province like the angels of death, and everybody wondered if there was going to be a whole bunch of forced amalgamations to bring back the ghost of Mike Harris and all that kind of thing. And everybody was very, very, very concerned. And with the more happy Ford government of 2020, that all really chilled. But what we found is it went from being, okay, you've stopped annoying us, all the way to we're actually pretty content with the way you've been treating us the last couple of years. So that's a really significant observation, both from the mood of the province and the mood of the sector, but I think also it's probably got bearings on the election. Like, I'm not saying there's some kind of causal relationship, CAOs are happy, so therefore the PCs are going to get reelected, like, not at all. But it's more like, you can take your temperature by putting a thermometer in your mouth, or you can put it under your armpit, or there's other places you can take your temperature. I think there's places you can take your temperature for the province. And it could be that CAOs are a place you can take the temperature because they actually have a remarkably broad view on things. They see a lot of different aspects of the, that was not an intended pun, by the way. When I said aspects, that was not a pun about another place you could take your temperature. But they see a lot of different places, and if they are relatively chill about the way things are going, I think it's a bit of an insight into the mindset of the province. And if you look, the province was at its lowest in the public polling in 2019, at the time when there was the greatest anxiety amongst CAOs, which is just sort of interesting. Jump to the next slide. So talked a little bit about some of the stuff we heard. This question, you're going to say, well, the answers aren't quite the same as the others, and that's because the question wasn't quite the same. It's kind of like, what's most urgent on your mind that you think you've got to deal with right away versus what's most important that you don't have a solution to. And this might be the slide that's a little bit like things in rearview mirror are closer than they appear. But for the next 5 years, what we got was a real strong focus on the trifecta of growth, housing and affordability, and climate change. And I think what's fascinating about this, as we sit in a province that's had its first transit-oriented community MZOs issued just in the last couple of days, in a province that's got Bill 109 with some pretty controversial features that have been called by one planner in the city of Toronto as the 33 or free guarantee. You hit your timelines or you start giving rebates. And the political debate, if you express yourself in terms of growth or complete communities in that, it's usually I need lots of revenue and lots of infrastructure in order to build my community in the way it's got to be. And that'll be like a growth pays for growth narrative, and that'll be all about the things that we need to maintain the infrastructure and the quality of the community. The housing and affordability narrative doesn't really start from how we make a great community. It starts from buddy, wake up, we need housing now. And it's a real lover's quarrel, right? Between do we want to build our communities right, or do we want to give the housing that people need today? Because it's pretty tough to say that either perspective is wrong. They're both really important principles. But oh my goodness, nobody has figured out what the right balance is between those two things. Not the province, not the regional planning commissioners of Ontario, not AMO, not nobody. And I think when you add to that climate change, the climate change dimension of it is, oh, do we want to build our communities right? Oh, do we want to look after our people who need housing? Or, oh, everything we've always done is not good enough anymore because the way we did it was built for 100-year storms and they seem to happen every 6 weeks. And oh, they all have to be net zero ready. And oh, by the way, we don't have the local distribution assets to enable things to go ahead. Now you'll see there's a few slides racing along that have quotations. This is indicative of what you'll see in the report. We have all kinds of full text quotations, and that's what makes the report so interesting. It's not me going on and on and on. It's actually 27 CAOs going on and on and on. And you can replicate the fun of having your own CAO, but have it 26 times over in addition. So I really think it can be very good therapy for everyone. But you'll see from the different perspectives a kind of unresolved tension between this housing affordability question and getting communities built right question. And if there's one thing that I've observed in the last 2 years, you may not know much about StrategyCorp, but we go all over the province doing strategic plans and service delivery reviews and operating reviews and basically whatever people will ask us to do. And I'm really taken by how much the whole challenge of the proper integration of housing with infrastructure. It used to be something that you knew was a problem in Toronto, you knew it was a problem in the 905, but there were a lot of parts of the province where nothing much had happened since Confederation and people liked it that way. Or at the very least, that was the way it was. And of course, it's impossible to find a place in Ontario that's south of the French River that doesn't have more growth than it wants, and that isn't trying to cope with, say, suddenly becoming a place that's got 12-month seasonality because all the Torontonians are staying all year and putting stress out on the services 12 months of the year, and having gravel roads that were only ever intended to be used in the summer being used and torn up in February and all this kind of thing. So there's incredible stresses that are coming out of the changing patterns of all of this growth management. And I would say, my main message to councils is the CAOs are seeing this, councils are seeing this. There is just so much work that needs to be done in answering the question, how do we have the growth that we want and are prepared to tolerate without ruining our community?